Okay, today I want to talk about actually creating some motion commands for the robot so we can set some points in there. So this will be the first time you get to try out what we've learned about the robot. So the first thing is we're going to have what the program motion instruction is. So again, program motion instruction. Okay. So let me put one up here for you. It's going to be J, T, and then we're going to have a couple of brackets. I'm going to have one, and another bracket, a numeric value. Okay, and then we will have some kind of what they call a termination. So let's go through each step of this. The J is your motion type, and this is a joint. J stands for joint, and this is our motion type. Okay. The next one, P. P is your position type. Put that over here. Okay. The one that you have here, this is actually your position number. Okay. 50, that's the speed we're going to move from this point at, or to this point. And then our last one here, our fine, that is what they call the termination. And that is, again, in our case, what I've got written here is fine. It's got fine or continuous, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Over here, J, they can have joint, like I said before. They can have, see how to spell it here, linear, and they can have circular. The P, we could have either P for position type, or we could have PR, which is position register. In other words, we can either put in a position type, in other words, we're going to go to a point, or in this case, we can actually create a register that would be our position. Position number, well here, that is dependent on where you are as far as your program goes. And that would be 1 through 32,767 different points we could possibly program. The speed, again, that is going to determine how fast the robotic arm is going to move from position to position. And in joint mode, it can be from 1 to 100%. Okay? Termination, again, I said it could be either fine or continuous. Fine means it's going to go exactly from one point to the next. If it's continuous, it can be 0 to 100. And with fine, and I've got these 3 points out here, it means I'm going to go from this point directly to that point to this point. If I'm continuous, what they're talking about is that if it's 100, instead of going all the way to that second point, it's going to shave it off or curve it a little bit. So this would be roughly at 100. In comparison, 75 would get you a little bit closer. And finally, your 50 would get you even closer. Okay, if I have 0 for continuous, obviously it's just going to be identical to my find. Okay, we talked about the program motion command or instruction. So now what I want to talk about is how we take and create that program inside the robot. Okay, so for the step 1, we need to check the controller and make sure that obviously it is turned on. Check the key switch to make sure it is set to T1. Okay. And then the other thing with the controller is make sure that the E-stop has been reset. Okay. And the easiest way to do that is just turn it to the right and pull on it a little bit if it doesn't pop out. That should reset the E-stop. Our step 2, and I'll write that over here so I got enough room, is to go to the teach pendant now. And in the teach pendant, we need to make sure that the selector switch is on. And again, it has an E-stop as well, so we need to make sure that the E-stop again is been reset. Okay. Step 3, on the controller, the teach pendant, excuse me, on the teach pendant, what you want to do now is go ahead and push the coordinate button. In other words, we need to make sure that the robot is in the right mode. So on the teach pendant, go ahead and push the coordinate button until we put it in world mode for programming. Okay. Step 4. On the teach pendant, we're going to push the select button. Okay. And what that'll do is it'll give us a list of the programs that are already in the robot. And on that, we are going to, obviously, if you've never made a program before, this is when we're going to create our program. So, at the very bottom of the screen, you will see a gray bar. And on that gray bar, it's been segmented into 5 segments. And the second one is would be the word create. And that is right above the F2 key, the function key F2. So at this point, step 5, we're going to go ahead and push F2, and again, that is the create command. So this is where we actually get into the creation of a program. Step 6. What we need to do at this point is we need to determine how we're going to put that program in there, or what we're going to call that program. So what you want to do is we should have a window or a little screen or a little part of the screen that is popped up And over here, it should say alpha input. And I think it has a 1 with it. And in this box, you're going to see word, uppercase, lowercase, and on ours then it's option. So there's 4 different ones. And what we want to do is arrow down so that we've got uppercase. When we get uppercase, what will then appear, again at the bottom of the screen, we're going to have that gray bar that appears. And on that gray bar, you're going to have letters that correspond to the alphabet. So the first one might have 4 or 5 letters, second one, and so on. And each one of those will also correspond to a function key. Here in our lab, we always start our program name with the letter Z. And the reason we do that, it makes it easier at the end of the semester to go in and delete any programs we no longer need. So any of the students' program names are always going to start with a Z. Okay. So then I'm going to press the F key, and I believe it is F5 again, and it's going to give me, punch it a couple times, and I'm going to get a Z. Okay. I have to arrow over to put my next letter in. Okay. Each time I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to put ZZ and then my initials. After the G again, I have to arrow over. And then I'm going to put the J. Okay, so that would be the program that I'm writing, or what I'm going to call the program that I'm writing. Once I get that in there, or created that, then I want to hit, let's make this step 7. So I've created a name, now I have to get into it so I can actually record the points. So at step 7, I want to press the button that says enter. Okay? And if I push that twice, that'll now give me a blank screen where I can start programming the points that I'm going to put in. Okay? I'm going to erase some of this because obviously I'm running out of room. So I'm going to erase this over here. Has everybody got it written down? Hopefully. If not, we will. I've got a printed copy I can give you. Okay. Okay, so we're continuing with that. Again, we've hit enter twice. Now I should have a blank screen in front of me, and at the top of the blank screen I should have the ZZ GJ name there. And now I want to go ahead and set my points. So now, because I have the robot in world mode, I just move the robot, think of my X, Y, and Z. I move the robot to a position where I want to set my first point. And then if at the bottom again, I'll have that gray bar. And this time it's only segmented in 3 parts. The gray bar has point on this end, and that's the only one we're really concerned about at this time. And that's going to be my F1, I believe. Let me see what that, yeah, that'd be F1 for point. Okay. So as soon as I press that, I'm going to get a window. Another little window that pops up. And in that window, that's going to be called the default motion. Where do we got here? Default motion 1. Okay, so what it's doing is I can choose between, in this case, 4 different program setups or program, what do we call those? motion instructions. There's actually 4 of them shown there. So in our case with our robot, our number 2 already has a J, a P, my 2 brackets here, and ours has 40% for the speed, and then it actually has CNT 100 shown there as well. So I'm going to pick 2, and when I pick 2, I move my arrow down to this one so it's highlighted. When I press enter, what will happen is I will see a 1, an asterisk sign, and I will see the J, P. In this case, it's my first point, so it'll be a 1 in there. And then I will have the 40%, and again, CNT 100 will be shown as well. Okay. Push point again. So if I push point again, that was my F1, I will have this window pop up. I'm just going to hit enter. So every time I do that, and you do this as you move to another position. So we're creating a point each time we move to a new position. We have to do this. So I move to that new point, push JP, and again, this time it'll be number 2, 40%, and CNT 100. In other words, I'm just choosing the same one each time. So that will create the points that I want to create. What I want you to do when you get there is we're just going to create a box. Okay? So we have to have a point for each one of these corners. So move the robot to your first point. Okay, you get to your first point, push F1, we arrow down to our second in that default motion window, and as soon as we hit enter, this will be recorded as our first point. We move to our second point, our second position. Again, I press F1. This will pop up. I'm going to hit enter. It'll give me the same motion type command, but it's actually recording a new position. So I'm going to do that for all 4. Okay. That should give you the start of your program. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, nothing? Okay. Let's go over to lab and see how this works. And I'll give a little demonstration at that time. Okay, here is the teach pendant screen. If you look up here, you can see that I've got the selector switch in the on position. I also have my e-stop out. You will notice that it says fault up here. At this point, it doesn't matter. During this process of creating the points, once I try to move the robot, obviously I have to get rid of the faults. But the first thing I want you to see is, you can see right here is that gray bar I was talking about, and it is split into 5 choices, and the one we are concerned with is the one that says create here. They correspond to the F keys that are located down here. So create corresponds to F2, so I'm going to push that. Okay, here is your create teach pendant program, and now it's waiting for me to create the program name. If you look at this little window that popped up over here, this is what I was talking about as far as the alpha input. And you can see the first one that's highlighted says words. I'm going to arrow down, so I'm going to go down to my screen here, arrow down, and you can see now it's switched to uppercase. And now if you look at that gray bar, you can see that the corresponding F keys correspond to a group of letters. And again, for here at our school, we always start with Z's. So there's the first Z, you arrow over. And I'm going to put another one in there, arrow over. I'm going to put a third one in there just to so that it isn't going to be confused with another program that I've got in there. And now I'm going to put my initials in there. My first letter would be a G. There's my G, and again, you have to arrow over each time, otherwise it doesn't move. You'd just be writing over the top of what you've already created. And then my last initial starts with a J. So I've got my J in there. So now I've got triple Z, G, J, and I'm going to push the Enter key. Okay, if you can see that it changed, that window disappeared. It says create teach pendant program. There's the program name I created. Now it says that the end is highlighted, and this is where you hit enter. Okay, you can see that it now says end here, and it says point. The other one that I couldn't remember before just says touch up. We're only concerned with the point right now. So I'm going to push F1 to correspond with point. And here's the default motion window I said that pops up, and you can see I've already got the second one highlighted, and that's where I wrote down JP with brackets 40% and continuous 100. So I'm going to hit enter. Okay, so that would be my first point, and that would be where you would have your robot positioned. So now each time I move the robot to a new position, I hit point. Again, the window pops up, I just hit enter, and I will put in all 4 of my points that way, but I have to obviously move the robot to different positions as I do that. So at this point, that's what you're looking at, and when I'm all done, I can go back and I can change these if I need to. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the camera, and we're going to go to the robot, and I'm going to run the program and show you how that works. Okay, so here I've placed all the points in. Now you'll notice that it's a gray foam block in the window that the robot's actually going to go from corner to corner on, but if you look here at my screen, I actually have 5 points that I've created. So what I did was I completed the last one and brought it back more or less to my first point. Okay, so that's what you're looking at here. Notice that the robot is in world mode. Okay, so X, Y, and Z. And my faults, I've cleared those now so that I can actually make the robot run. And one of the things we want to do, if you look right up here, you can see where it says step and it's in green. I'm actually going to push the step button here, and notice that I got 2 little red bars and a couple of arrows there now. What that does is it allows me to move the robot 1 point at a time. And we're going to try that. So I'm going to push the shift button and the forward button, and I watch the robot now. Okay, so right now that's point 1. It's going to be moving to point 2, and I just sped it up a little bit. Okay, so there it's moved. I'm going to go to the next point that I've programmed. The next one. Okay, and that would have been point 4, and now we're going to go back more or less to our starting position, so this is point 5. Okay, so now if you go back to the screen where I've got yellow and I've got the 2 red bars and the arrows, I'm going to push step again. You can see that it's now switched back to green up here. And now if you watch the robot, when I push the forward button, it's going to go, when I push this, it should run the whole program. So it's going to go through each one of the points that I've programmed. Okay. So you can see that, again, every time I push the forward, it's going to run through the whole, all the points that I've actually programmed. All you have to do is hold the shift key. If at any time you think something is going wrong or it looks like you're going to crash into something, you can either take your thumb off the shift button or release or squeeze the dead man switch. Okay, get to work.